I'm Matthew.
I'm Ainsley.
We've been married for 5 years now. We have been connected in the fostering adoption realm for most of our lives. My family, my parents were foster parents. I have 3 brothers that were adopted out of foster care. And so at a very early age, being exposed to kids that were hurting right in my backyard completely wrecked me in the best way.
Yeah.
And so I can remember as a middle schooler knowing confidently that this was part of my calling and knowing that God was going to use this in ways way into my adulthood. So growing up, I always knew that at some point I wanted to be part of serving and loving kids that didn't have homes, kids that were walking through transition, kids that were in vulnerable places. It just was something I knew for sure was something in my story.
For sure. When I was in middle school, my niece, she was in a kinship placement with my mom. And that happened for a few years, and I really grew a heart. I got to know like the caseworkers, and I got to know kind of the ins and outs of foster care. And so, we didn't know each other yet in middle school, but we had both made the decisions at such a young age, 12 or 13, that this was something that we wanted to continue whenever we had the means to do so.
So that was definitely a huge part of our dating story.
I think we brought it up on the first date that we wanted to be foster parents.
Yeah.
Separately.
We were like, listen, we need to... If this is a deal breaker, we just might as well move on. So I'll just go ahead and get this out of the way.
Yes.
And so it took a few years, obviously, for us to build our relationship, to figure out where God had us. There was an out-of-state move in there,
Yeah.
buying a house. But slowly but surely, the pieces started to fall into place where God made it very obvious to us that it was time.
Yep.
And so we got the opportunity in early 2023 to officially open our home.
Yeah.
We took on one short-term placement, and then very quickly after got 2 girls, 7 and 13 sisters, and then a few months later got the opportunity to take in their brother. And so went from 0 to 3.
Yeah.
So our home changed pretty drastically.
Got a lot louder.
Yes. And there was definitely a need for us very quickly where we realized, okay, we need some community to back us up.
Yes.
We need some support. I think we wanted to believe that we could do it, and that if we prayed hard enough and if we loved hard enough, that we could make it through any challenge.
And we're so young and fun.
Yeah.
Of course we could do it.
And God very quickly was like, that's all great, but we're going to build some people around you.
Yes.
We're going to build a community, a team to do this with you.
Yes.
And that was really, I think, where we were, where our hearts were when we got connected with Adoption Helpers, where we were ready to receive that help, even though it's very hard to ask for help.
Absolutely.
We are incredibly blessed with a phenomenal church community. It's literally what brought us to South Carolina was our church and the leadership and the people inside and how well they love. And I will say that since we opened up our home, we have felt nothing but support and love from the people at our church. We very often wake up to detailed texts of people praying for us and sharing scripture and wanting to know more pieces of our story. We've had bags of clothes brought to church to us. We've had meals provided. But I do think that there's this awkwardness that's nobody's fault. In fact, it's probably something that we could communicate better.
Yeah.
Of people that recognize there's a need, that recognize there's a place for them to jump in and be a part of the solution, but aren't quite sure what that is. Where I see this, I want to support this, I see these kids, they're in my small group, I walk past them in the halls, I see them in service. I want to be a part of their story and what God is doing in their story, but I'm not quite sure at what point I jump in or how I do that. which is why I think organizations like Adoption Helpers are so crucial, because I do think that people are out there. I think there are people that God is calling that don't necessarily need to open up their homes, that's not quite part of their story, but if they're willing to give up some of their time in order to love families well, there are definitely opportunities. And I would say, and not that we can speak for every foster family, but I know I can speak for us when I say that is a need. Yeah. That we have learned that time away for us to pour into each other, separate from the kids in our home, to be reminded of what's true and what God has called us to and whose we are, so that we can step back into this place and be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And one of the best ways to make that happen is to have moments where we do intentionally step away. But that's hard because our kids are hard and their stories are hard. And it's hard to know who we can trust with those stories. Ooh, sorry. It's hard to know who we can trust with their stories, with their hearts. And so getting connected to Laura and to Dara, and to know that these are people that understand that we can trust, that are bringing people onto their team that we can trust. That's huge. I mean, it brings so much peace to our hearts, that I think people just don't understand how helpful that is for someone to enter our home that we know we can trust with what's happening here. Yes. We've been kind of in the fostering adoption realm for much longer than we've actually been foster parents. And I actually serve on a nonprofit board that supports foster families. And so I was at an expo and connected with Laura at Adoption Helpers, and it was one of those things where she came over to my table to find out what we were doing, and so we could find out what they were doing. And she was like, yeah, I'm with this organization. We support foster and adoptive families. Here are some of the things that we've done. One of the things we're trying to do is provide free respite for those families. And so if you know any families that might want to participate, I would love to add them to the wait list. And I was like, I do. Where can I sign up? I will sign up today. Give me the link. And since it's been awesome. I mean, even if you strip away all of the events that they do and the free respite, just the encouragement and joy that they fill our inbox with every time they reach out.
For sure.
It just is one of those things that it's just an organization that's uplifting and a joy to be connected with.
Absolutely. And speaking from, the standpoint of a mother, just having someone and meeting someone who was so warm and welcoming, coming into my home and embracing our kids, that was really special to me and really brought my soul to ease, because even the girls, they always ask still, they're like, oh, when is Miss Dara coming back? When is Miss Dara coming back? So they, it was just so great. It was just such a great experience meeting her and having her come into our home. For sure.
Yeah. So we got connected back in the fall, and then our first experience with respite happened in December, which I thought was wild that they offered that.
Absolutely.
But Dara shared with us, she was like, it's really important to us that we offer respite because we know how hectic the holidays are. And we know that in this busy season is when families need the most support. And so the fact that it wasn't something that they created just to be convenient for them, they're like, all right, well, we'll wait till things slow down. Sometime maybe in April, once we get past Easter, we'll offer this. But they're like, no, like right now in the holiday season, we want to do something tangible for families that need it the most. And so we got to sign up for a date night, which was awesome in the middle of December, so needed. Dara came to our home. There was no hesitancy from us because there was so much communication, and the forms that we had to fill out on the front end it was really encouraging for us that that Adoption Helpers was doing their due diligence to learn who we were, who our kids were, what their needs looked like, how for those few hours they could do their best to love those kids right where they are. So that way we knew that when we stepped out of this home that they were in the best possible care. And that was so obvious to us from the minute that they connected with us after we signed up for that date. And then Dara showed up and she knew our kids' names and immediately connected with them. She was, looked at our older daughter and said, "Hey, I know that you really love art. I would love to see some of the things that you're working on." And then looked at the 7-year-old and said, I hear you love board games. Have you picked one out for us to play? So it wasn't just coming in and, I think anybody can come in and love children well, but for her to have done the research and to walk in with a knowledge of who our kids were, made us be like, okay, well, you've got this. We'll see you in a few hours.
Absolutely. Yes. And it was so nice. It was nice to have a moment to get away and to have someone that you know and that you've had conversations with and that you trust to come into your home and take care of your kids for a little while, while we got away.
And the reality is that our day-to-day is not always easy. It is what we feel called to do every single day. God has been so sweet to us to remind us of that calling and the purpose in it, and to bring the sweet with the hard. But it's not easy. No. Just this morning, we got into a little bit of a tussle with the 7-year-old in our home. So for there to be an organization that sees us, that gets what we're doing, that understands the good and the hard, and wants to do something tangible to love on us was huge. Because I think that people recognize what it is we do, recognize how hard it is, but don't always know how to jump in, don't always know where they fit in that puzzle. And that's okay, because it's kind of a strange thing.
Yeah, yes.
But what I love is that Adoption Helpers has given purpose to those people that are like, hey, this may not necessarily be where I'm in life. Like, I'm not sure that God is calling me to do what you're doing, but I can be part of the solution. Yes. I can do something to support these kids that need support more than anybody else I know. And so to not only be seen and understood and heard by an organization, but then also to be loved in a way that is deeply needed and deeply felt by us as foster parents it's more than we could ever imagine or explain our gratitude for.
And it's so special. It's so special to be known. It's so special to have someone who knows what they're walking into and what you're walking through. And like Matthew said, have people that know us and know our stories and know our kids' stories and hold those stories so close, because they walk through, every day they walk through hardships, and to have someone come into our home for a few hours and to spend time with them and to know their interests, because at this point, they look at us and they're like, oh, well, you're our parents, you have to be interested in what's happening in our lives. But to have someone who walks in and says, I know your favorite color is red and purple and blue, and how is this TV show you're watching, and oh, tell me about this book, or can you play a song for me on your instrument, just knowing those intimate details of our kids is just so special. And it helps our kids trust adults in their lives, and it helps them feel seen by adults in their lives too, which I think is so important.
Which I think people don't recognize, but is one of the biggest keys to serving kids with trauma. Yes. Is to allow them to be fully seen and fully known for who they were designed to be. Yep. Which is not always the case in their stories. There's a lot, you see it consistently, of kids that walk in and have never had an adult look at them in the eyes and express a genuine interest in something that they're passionate about. And so for someone, you're right, for someone other than us for a few hours to be an adult that does that, I think makes a massive difference in the hearts of these children.
Yeah. And you don't have to do the training, you don't have to get certified, you don't have to get your house checked to make a difference in the life of a foster child. At the end of the day, I think knowing those things, makes more of a difference than you would ever know.
I would say if you're out there and you're seeing this today, and there's this twinge in your heart of, hey, maybe that's something that I can be a part of, my encouragement to you would be to reach out to someone at Adoption Helpers, because even if you're not quite sure where you fit in that puzzle, they are the perfect group to kind of walk you through that and help you figure it out. Because I do think that you are capable of making a difference in the life of a child in your community. And I wouldn't want you to miss out on that.